Hi everyone, Robin here. Thanks for joining me today on the Poppystamps blog. Well, Christmas is over. Next big day will be Valentine's Day coming up before we know. My card today features several of the new Poppystamps dies from their latest release. And let's get started. I'll be using the double stitch scalloped rectangle frames, the petite stitched hearts, and the embossed love die. I'll be cutting the love die 3 times because I would like my sentiment to be somewhat dimensional. The first time I'm cutting it normally with just an upper lower cutting plate. And the third time I'll be using a piece of fun foam first, then my cardstock, and then I'll be adding my love die. Add your top plate and run it through your die cut machine as usual. The fun foam acts as a mini embossing pad, and you'll see the dimension you can achieve just by adding that little bit of fun foam. As you can see, it makes a huge difference in your final die cut. Next, I'll be using my spray adhesive and adding it to both of the more plain die cuts. I will be layering them together. The spray adhesive does not dry super fast, so you have a little bit of wiggle room to get everything lined up. I am then adding the more dimensional love, and there's my sentiment. Here I'm using the largest of the double stitch scalloped rectangle frames. The stitching is just beautiful on these frames. It really adds a nice dimension to the final die cut. I'm using the petite stitched hearts. I think they go very well with the stitching on the frame I'm using. For the hearts, I am putting a piece of fun foam under them. It probably didn't make any difference, but I may have use for some fun foam hearts coming up. Not sure, but why not? As you can see, these little hearts are just beautiful. I'll be using the largest of the hearts on my card today, and I'll be saving the others for another project. Now I need to make a backer for my frame. I'm cutting the backer at 3 5/8 by 4 13/16. I know that number sounds scary, but it's 4 3/4 plus that little line to the right. I'm using a pretty piece of red cardstock as my frame liner, and I'm going to use a heart embossing folder. I think it looks really nice. I have a bazillion embossing folders. I'm sure you do too. I can't resist them for some reason. Now today, to run it through my die cut machine, I'm not going to open up the tabs for the embossing. I'm simply removing my lower plate, adding a very thin embossing pad, and my upper plate. That way I'm not switching tabs out all the time. I find it saves me a little bit of time, and it works perfectly, but it has to be a thin embossing pad. So here I'm adding glue to the back side of my frame, and I am using the liquid adhesive so I can move my little backer piece around a bit. Make sure it slips right inside those scallops. And then place something heavy on top and allow it to dry. For my card base, I'm once again making a top fold card base. So I've cut a piece of paper to 4 1/4 by 11 and scoring down the middle at 5 1/2. Fold over and using your bone folder, create a nice sharp crease. So usually before I go crazy and start putting things on my card base, I lay everything out kind of like a dry run to make sure I know where I would like to place things before I actually use adhesive and put them down. It has saved many a card by just doing this little test drive, as I like to call it, on my cards. Once I've decided where everything's going, I'm going to be popping up my sentiment with some foam tape. I've cut some small strips so that it fits behind the love die. It's a nice thick word die, and you can get a lot of tape back there pretty easily. But I do cut some very thin strips here and there and make sure everything will pop up nicely. I added my love sentiment to my card panel, and then I added a piece of foam tape behind the large heart. I also cut a set of red hearts and used the smallest one in the middle of the O. For the back of my card, I'm using some 1-inch foam tape. I find that works quite well, keeping it nice and flat, and added it to my card base. To finish my card, I'm using some little diamonds and a gem stick, a little liquid glue, and added them to my card base. Here's a quick tip. Use a piece of felt to hold your sequins or diamonds so they don't roll all over your table. So I hope you enjoyed my video today, making this relatively easy Valentine's Day card. And don't forget to leave a comment below for your chance to win that beautiful embossed love die. Hope you enjoyed it. Stop back soon for more inspiration from Poppystamps. Have a great day. Bye-bye.